Okay. Okay. So what do we expect from white people who I consider in the fight with us? I mean, we just exclude them because they're white?
What do you mean by in the fight? Define for me what a white person being in the fight means.
No, they're not black, but they see that, they see where they see our struggle, and they march with us. They stand with us. I mean, it's simple. I mean, there are some who actually love us and love us genuinely. Well, I mean, why we just can't?
Okay, is they made it more desirable to identify with the power structure than to identify with black people, and they did this by doing what? Giving us jobs, giving us government jobs, allowing a lot of us to go to college. Remember, before Dr. King, you couldn't go to these white universities. After Dr. King, every white university started recruiting black folks. You see, so they made you more comfortable. They made you feel like you were a part of the system. So we bought into the matrix. We bought into the illusion of inclusion. And so now, 60 years after King, black people feel they got more to lose to participate in the power structure. See, back in the 40s and 50s and 60s, you knew you had nothing to lose. Even if you was a doctor or a lawyer, you still had to live in a ghetto. Even if you was a doctor or a lawyer, you still had to use a segregated lunch counter. If you was a doctor or a lawyer, you still couldn't buy a house in a white neighborhood. So even though you were the academic, economic, political elite, you got treated the same way as everybody else. But today they stratified it. So that black lawyer today can live in that white neighborhood. You understand? That black business owner today, he can get him a white wife. You see, now you can drive you a Mercedes-Benz. You have certain privileges that you enjoy within the power structure. So a lot of us are afraid to lose these useless privileges that the white power structure has given us, and that's why it's so hard to find black people to fight for black justice.
Okay. Now, I heard you say something about somebody going getting a white wife. Is there something wrong with a black man marrying a white wife, and can he still not be for the cause?
Absolutely, brother. It is an absolute contradiction. Not in my book, not in the perspective of the revolutionary Pan-Africanist, not from the perspective of the Garveyite. It is a total contradiction for a black man to claim that he is committed to African racial liberation, and yet still you share your bed with a member of the group that is oppressing your race. That is an absolute contradiction. That's like a European Jew saying he wants to liberate the European Jews from the Nazis, but he's married to a Nazi. It is totally unacceptable because all white people are racist. All white people are racist. And when I say all white people are racist, let me explain what that means. It means that all white people benefit from the oppression of black people, and all white people participate in that oppression, indirectly or directly, by omission or commission. So, for example, you might get a white person who said, I never owned a slave. None of my ancestors never owned a slave, and I can prove it. Well, guess what? I'm not going to dispute the fact that none of your ancestors owned slaves, because most white people did not own slaves. So how do you claim that the white person is responsible for slavery if their ancestors didn't own any slaves? It's simple, because they benefited from the fact that African people were in fact enslaved. Whatever your ancestor did, whether they worked for the railroad, whether they worked for the cotton mill, whatever job your ancestor had was directly or indirectly created by the American chattel enslavement of African people. So whether you owned the slave or not, the fact that your ancestors had a job at all was due to the fact that my ancestors were enslaved. Furthermore, you did nothing to destroy that system of slavery, and you automatically benefited by virtue of being white. You were given a privileged society, a privileged status above and beyond all black people who were enslaved. So when you look at it from a systems perspective, see, we like to look at slavery and racism from an individual perspective, and that's what white people want you to do. They want you to look at racism as an individual problem. They want you to look at slavery as an individual problem. A couple white people own slaves. A couple white people are racist. That is a total false approach to racism. Racism is a system. You look at the system of slavery and you say, is there any white person in America who did not benefit from the fact that black people were dehumanized? Absolutely not. Are there any white people in America who did not benefit from the fact that black people worked for free for 243 years? Absolutely not. Is there any white people in America who did not benefit from the fact that black people were not considered citizens and did not have privileges and could not take a white person to court? Absolutely not. Just like in slavery, just like in the slave society, right now in the 21st century American apartheid society, it's the same thing. Every white person benefits from the mass incarceration of black folk because it guarantees them less competition for jobs. Every white person benefits from the impoverishment of the black community because it guarantees them that black people can't afford to live in their neighborhood. Every white person benefits from the assassination of the black male's image because it automatically means that the white male will not be the target of police brutality and police suspension and police suspicion and police genocide, because all of that attention is directed to the black man. Let me give you an example. We walk into the store with two white males. You and I, two black males, walk into a store with two white males. I have a doctorate in psychology. You have a radio show. We go in here together, two upstanding citizens, two upstanding members of the black community. We might even have suits on. Two white kids walking in. They can be dead broken poor. They coming in here to steal. We're not coming in here to steal. But guess what? They will steal and get away with it because all employees in that store have been conditioned to track us, to racially profile us. And so while they're watching us do nothing at all, the two white kids are able to steal, rob them blind, and get out there. So those two white kids benefited from the fact that you are a black male and that you're the one who's always going to be the focus of suspicion, and the white male will always be given the privilege of never being considered a suspect. So there's no such thing as an America where there's white people who are not racist. They all participate in racism. They all benefit from racism. And anyone who says that they don't benefit from racism or do not participate in racism is either a fool or a liar.
Okay. So what do we expect from white people who I consider in the fight with us? I mean, we just exclude them because they're
white.
What
do you mean by in the fight? Define for me what a white person being in the fight means.
No, they're not black, but they see that, they see where they see our struggle and they march with us. They stand with us. I mean, it's simple. I mean, there are some who there are some who actually love us and love us genuinely. Well, I mean, why we just can't?
Okay.
Why we just can't be that with them? I mean, we just can't love them the same way they love us. If they love us,
so let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Let me ask you a question. First of all, I don't want to deal in emotions. Love is emotion, so that's totally off the table for discussion because emotions change.
Okay.
We want to deal with concrete political reality. So the question is this. Although the white person loves you, they march with you, they stand with you, and they can see your issues. My question for you is real simple. What have white people ever done, ever, in America, to systematically dismantle the system of racism, which includes the white privilege that they benefit from as a result of your oppression? Name me a white person or a white movement that ever tried to systematically dismantle racism and or the white privilege that they benefit from. Because marching with me does not dismantle racism. Loving me does not dismantle racism. Standing with me or seeing my struggle does not dismantle racism. All of those are states of mind or public social activities. I don't care about public social activities. What are you doing politically and economically to destroy the system of racism? So we're talking about systemic mass incarceration, systemic miseducation, systemic gentrification, systemic police genocide and brutality, and systemic denial of access to wealth. Where is the white person or white movement that is trying to redistribute the wealth of America that black people built so we could participate in some of this American dream that was built on our backs that we have not yet seen? Where's the white movement to destroy and rebuild the miseducation machine, to bring in more black teachers and more black principals and bring a revolutionary black curriculum? Where's the white movement to stop rich whites from taking over black ghettos and putting black people in the homeless shelter and in the street? Show me one movement designed by whites that seriously targets one of the major problems that systemic racism has created.
I can't.
Because it doesn't exist. What they do is they play psychological games with us, and it's called disarm the victim. Disarm the victim has been the strategy of the Democratic Party. Disarm the victim has been the strategy of the white liberal for the last 80 years. And what they do is they come around politically uneducated blacks, and they will march with you during the George Floyd, but they won't do anything politically about the police. You see, they'll march with you for better schools, but they'll never do anything politically to change the schools. They'll march with you against racism, but they'll never do anything politically to change our access to the wealth in America's banks. I want to see a nuts and bolts operation on paper by a white person, a white organization designed to destroy white privilege or systemic racism. I have never seen it. All I see is white folks coming around black folks, hugging and kissing and singing and loving and marching and holding hands, which is nothing but a social gesture. That is nothing but cosmetic surgery. That is nothing but a public circus. I want to see what you do after the march. I want to see what you do after we hold hands. I want to see what you do after we sing the songs. I want to see what you do after you come from the Breonna Taylor rally, after you come from the Ahmaud Arbery rally, after you come from the George Floyd riot. Don't tell me that standing with black people during a social public event is progress. Progress is white people challenging white people to destroy the system of racism. And until I see white people challenge white people to destroy racism, can't nobody ever tell me that white folks are sincere in their efforts to destroy racism, because if they were, racism would have been destroyed 100 years ago.
Can't argue with you there. I can see. I let it go. I let it
you
go.
See? You see, it's the disarming of the victim that we don't see. Let me give you an example, my brother. As you know, a few months ago, right after George Floyd was murdered, it kicked off the largest mass black protests in American history since the Dr. King assassination riots. So you had the Great Red Summer, that was the 1967 riots, and then you had the very next year, the Dr. King assassination riots. We hadn't seen nothing like the 1967 riots or the Dr. King assassination riots in almost 60 years. So right after George Floyd gets murdered, you have the largest black mass protest since those years, 67 to 68. But guess what? What did we get out of it? We got nothing out of it. And you know why we got nothing out of it? Because we allowed the march to be infiltrated and integrated with white folks and everybody else. According to the Pew Research study, I believe it was the Pew Foundation, they said only 1 out of every 6 protesters were black. Only 1 out of every 6 protesters were black. You cannot allow white folks to join your movement or your march because white people outnumber black people 6 to 1. 6 to 1. So if you let them infiltrate a march for black justice, brother, they automatically can take it over by the sheer strength of their numbers. So that march was integrated, and it was diluted, and it was redirected. And when the march ends, guess what happened? What did we get when the march ended? When those protests ended after all those weeks,
nothing at all.
President Donald Trump signs a Hispanic prosperity bill. Look at this. He signs a Hispanic prosperity bill, and then the Supreme Court hand down the LGBTQs a historic landmark decision that says that they cannot be discriminated against even in employment. So if you don't want homosexuals working for you, you have no choice. Okay? Now, whether that's good or bad is irrelevant. I'm trying to show you that black people went out here for 5 weeks and galvanized media attention more than anybody since Dr. King. And it was the homosexuals who benefited and the Hispanics who benefited. And we got nothing out of it.